Welcome. I'm calling to order the 2010 annual meeting of the Hudson School District. As we begin this evening, I want to welcome those of you, the electors and community members that are in our audience, and would like to introduce you to the people that you see here on the podium. My name is Barb Van Lunen. I'm the president of the Hudson Board of Education. And around the table to my right is Tom Holland, who is the vice president of the Hudson Board of Education. To his right is Dan Chernahoy, the clerk of the Hudson Board of Education. Following Dan is Brian Bell, the treasurer of the Hudson Board of Education, and Mark Kaiserschott, Board of Education member. To my left is Pat German, Board of Education member, and Lynn Robson, Board of Education member. Immediately to my left is Mary Bowen Egebraten, the superintendent, and on my far left is Tim Erickson, who is the district financial services director. Thank you. And immediately to my right is our parliamentarian for this meeting, Mick Waldsberger. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mick.
Good evening. My name is Mick Waldsberger, and it is my privilege to serve as your parliamentarian here this evening. Before we begin, I'd like to briefly review some parliamentary procedures or ground rules that will apply during this annual meeting of the electors of the School District of Hudson. And these procedures are not meant to be restrictive, but rather to promote an orderly and efficient flowing meeting. First, you need to understand the definition of an elector. Each of you who is a citizen of the United States, is 18 years of age or older, and has resided in the School District of Hudson for 10 or more days before this annual meeting is considered to be an elector. Each elector has the right to make comments and ask questions at the appropriate point and place on the agenda. Comments must relate to an agenda item, and you are encouraged to submit other types of comments in writing to the superintendent or to make them at the next regularly scheduled meeting of the school board. In terms of comments being made at the appropriate place on the agenda, I'd like to give you an example. When we reach item 8 on the agenda, which is the hearing on the budget, the electors will be provided with an opportunity to make comments and ask questions regarding the budget. If you are an elector and you desire to make comments or to ask questions, you must come to the microphone, state your first and last name, state your address, and then wait to be recognized by the chairperson. After you've been recognized by the chair, you may then proceed with your comments. Only one elector may come up and speak at a time. Electors are encouraged to only speak on one topic rather than cumulatively or redundantly on the same topic. If a large number of people desire to speak, the chair may limit the amount of time for comments and questions to 3 minutes per person. As an elector, you have the right to make motions relating to an agenda item at the annual meeting, provided that the motion is within the powers of the annual meeting. And those powers are limited by statute. For example, Wisconsin law does not authorize electors to amend, approve, disapprove, or in any way modify the proposed budget. However, the statute does authorize electors to provide input on the budget and to vote a tax that is sufficient to operate and maintain the schools in the district. If an elector makes a motion that is beyond the powers of the annual meeting, the motion may be ruled out of order, and the chairperson may then decline to hear the motion. Alternatively, in the discretion of the chair may permit the motion to proceed on a purely advisory basis. Like comments, motions must also be made at the appropriate point on the agenda. After we complete item 8 on the agenda, which is the hearing on the budget, the next item on the agenda will be the adoption of the levy. At that time, the electors will be given an opportunity to make a motion to vote a tax that is sufficient to operate and maintain the schools of the district. If the electors do not vote a tax that is sufficient to operate and maintain the schools of the district, the school board has an obligation by statute to determine the amount that is necessary on or before November 1. Similarly, if the voters vote a tax that is greater than the revenue limits or an amount that is greater than what is needed to operate the schools, the school board may lower the tax on or before November 1. Other motions that are within the powers of the annual meeting and do not address the levy would fall under the agenda item for new business, which you'll see when we get to item 10B on the agenda. If you're an elector and you desire to make a motion, again, you must come up to the microphone. You must state your first and last name, state your address, and then wait to be recognized by the chairperson. After you've been recognized by the chair, you should then make your motion. After a motion has been made, another elector must second the motion in order for it to be heard. Once a motion has been made and seconded, the chair will then restate the motion for purposes of clarity, and at that time, debate or discussion may be had on the motion. After any debate or discussion has occurred, the chair will put the question to a vote, provided again that the motion is within the powers of the annual meeting. If any elector believes the debate has become too lengthy, the elector may move to limit the debate. This may occur in a couple of different ways. For example, an elector may state that I move to limit debate to a total of 10 minutes. Alternatively, an elector may move the previous question. By moving the previous question, an elector is moving to have a vote on the pending motion immediately and without any further discussion whatsoever. A 2/3 vote is required to pass a motion to move the previous question. I encourage electors to use these procedures sparingly, as our whole purpose of being here tonight is to gather input from the electors. As an elector, you do have the right to vote at this annual meeting, and all votes will be by voice vote. Generally, all in favor of the motion will be asked to say aye, and those opposed will be asked to say no. If the vote on a motion is close or in any way unclear, the chairperson or I will ask if the electors who said aye would please stand and verbally count off using numbers beginning with the number 1. After being counted, each elector will then sit down. The same procedure will be used to count the no votes, and the chairperson or I will announce the outcome of the vote. There is a procedure for challenging voter eligibility. The chairperson may accept a challenge to the eligibility of any person who claims to be an elector and is attempting to vote at the meeting. If the person who has been challenged declares that he or she is eligible to vote and the challenge is not withdrawn, the chairperson must administer the following oath or affirmation. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you are an actual resident of the School District of Hudson and are qualified, according to law, to vote at this meeting? Once that oath has been given, for purposes of this meeting, the challenge has concluded. Having reviewed the meeting procedures, the next item on our agenda, which is item 3, calls for the election of a chairperson to preside over the annual meeting. Once a nomination is made, I will ask if anyone is willing to second that nomination, and if so, a vote will be taken on the nomination. If there's no second, the vote will fail for a lack of second. Now, at this time, I'm asking for nominations, and using a microphone, I would ask, does any elector, including a board member, wish to voice a nomination for a chairperson?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to nominate Barb Van Lunen as the chairperson for the annual meeting.
Motion by by Lynn Robson to nominate Barb Van Lunen as the chairperson. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Mark Kaiserschott. Any discussion? All in favor of nominating Barb Van Lunen to preside as the chairperson of this annual meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. The motion passes unanimously, and we now have nominated Barb Van Lunen to serve as our chairperson of this annual meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mick. Item 4 on the agenda is approval of last year's annual meeting minutes from the September 8th, 2009 meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 8th,
September
8th, 2009 annual meeting.
Okay, motion
Second.
by Dan Chernahoy,
Second.
second by Lynn Robson. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes from the September 8, 2009 annual meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, item 5 is the Hudson School District highlights, which will be presented by Mary Bowen-Egebron.
Good evening.
and welcome to our annual meeting. It's good to see district residents here. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening. We have a lot of information to share about the good news about the district, and we also welcome your comments during the budget hearing later on this evening. It's appropriate that we start with the HSD 2025 strategic vision. This is the vision that was adopted by the board in May 2008 after an extensive time of study by a team of teachers and administrators and community members and business people and parents. And then it also received feedback and input from our community and our staff. And when this was adopted, after this was adopted, we've used this to guide our decisions, and as we look at it, it's certainly future-focused and centers on preparing each student for college and employment. And by college, we mean the expanded notation of college, technical college, two-year colleges, and four-year colleges as well. Since we'll be talking later about the budget and the investment of our taxpayers in the learning of our students and what we do each day in the Hudson School District, we're going to start out and share some of the results of that investment. And we'll start with 2009-10 and specific work that teachers and administrators and support staff have worked together collaboratively to produce student learning results. And SMART goals are student learning results that are specific, measurable, attainable, results-focused, and time-bound. If we turn first to the SMART goal for the elementary teachers and administrators achieved 86%, exceeding their goal of 83%, of all K through 5 learners at the end of the school year reading at or above grade level. And certainly that is the highest percentage we have experienced in the Hudson School District to date. And I know the elementary staff looks to expand that and increase that in future years. Looking to the middle school, in the areas of math, science, language arts, social studies, and communication, each of those areas created a goal, and if we look at them and average them, 91% of middle school students mastered the essential learning that all students need to be successful. So certainly a significant accomplishment by the middle school. And if we look at the high school's results, there were 4 goals for the high school. I'll focus on the first 2, which are really our high-performing students and our advanced placement classes. The first goal that you'll see, it says almost 25% more high school students from last year to 2009-10 enrolled in rigorous advanced placement courses, and this was a focus of the high school. And then of those students, we wanted to increase the percentage of students who actually took the AP exam that could award them college credit. And so 93% of the students who enrolled in AP courses took the exam, and you can see the difference from 2008. The last 2 goals focus on the other end of the students on that continuum, and we want to certainly improve the grades, which help to make more students successful, so improving A, B's, and C's. And the high school has worked on decreasing the D's and F's over a multi-year period of time. And in fact, this last year, the decrease was the highest that they've achieved, 19% decrease. And then freshmen, we know during the freshman year that if a student comes in from the middle school and is successful in the freshman year, their chances of continuing success through high school and then moving to graduation is much higher. So we wanted to reduce the number of freshmen considered at risk of academic failure, certainly by their grades, and it was reduced by 19%. So at the elementary, the middle school, and the high school levels, teachers and administrators and support staff working collaboratively together to push ourselves to the next level, achieve these goals. And certainly we say congratulations to those staffs, and we're looking forward to the new SMART goals that will come to the board in October. So as we consider those kind of results, certainly the Hudson School District learning, student learning, is a great value for your dollar. Moving on to the middle school, and I hope you know that our middle school is the largest middle school in the state of Wisconsin, and also to high school academics. The middle school was recognized as a school of excellence by the State Principals Association and by the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. And they were identified for that for 3 different areas. One was achievement, student achievement. And certainly that is a testament to what happens at the middle school when we think of the size of that middle school. And then also for their collaboration and their culture of excellence that is right in our strategic vision. We also have high-performing students, as you can see, and we have students who are involved in our co-curriculars, which is a way to be involved in high school beyond just the courses that they attend, and certainly an important way for them to extend their learning beyond just the school building walls. And we also had middle school students for the first time who participated in the NASA National Challenge. These students and their teacher took on a real-world problem that NASA scientists are wrestling with. And they had a solution to that problem. They were interviewed by a nationally group of experts and defended their solution. And it was quite wonderful for them to receive second in the nation. Certainly a great testament to the work that they put in and to their teacher, Chris DeLeon. There are many, many things that are happening in the Hudson School District, and during this time period, I won't have time to emphasize or to highlight all of them. So please know that as I talk about these products of the Hudson School District that are really reflections of our student learning, that they are only a snapshot in a large photo album of many, many accomplishments. And we've received a district recognition for the 3rd time. 2010, we've been named as one of the best communities for music education. And certainly this speaks to the quality of our music educators and the value that our community places on the arts. Music and the arts are part of our 2025 strategic plan and our foundational content area. High school athletics, certainly strong and continuing to get stronger. Certainly, high school athletics builds pride in our schools from the students and the staff and the community that supports them. 21st century skills are experienced by those athletes. We have many athletes involved, and I know Stephanie DeVos is working with a new community advisory group that's helping her build the future for that program and continuing to add on to our vision. We'll turn now to the 2010 Search Institute results. This search survey has occurred in the Hudson schools since 1990 and was supported by our community, and actually started by our community and supported particularly through Rotary and other community organizations. In 2010, we had almost 1,000 students in grades 7, 9, and 11 who took a survey about 40 developmental assets and certain risk behaviors and reported about those indicators. This survey is conducted in the Hudson schools every 5 years, so the results are compared to the results in 2005. And what we've experienced is unprecedented improvement from 2005 to 2010. In the 40 developmental assets, 37 of the 40 assets improved. And here's just some examples of those assets that showed improvement. That unprecedented improvement extends to the risk behaviors. And here again, there were 24 risk behaviors that were surveyed, and 21 of those decreased, as reported by our youth. Again, examples of those risk behaviors that decreased. Certainly important things as we think of the health and wellness of our young people and their ability to become responsible and caring adults. This unprecedented improvement is a 92% increase in the developmental assets and an 87% decrease in the risk behaviors. You know, certainly the school district takes partial credit, but we also know that our community, our parents, organizations within the community, our churches have all supported our youth, and it's reflected in these survey results. So as a community, we should feel really good about this unprecedented improvement. We focused as a district on environmental sustainability. It provides more learning opportunity for our students, and we have each school has established an outdoor learning site. We have 3 dedicated forests, one at the middle school and Hudson Prairie, one at Rivercrest, and then one at the high school. We've also experienced a decrease in our, or a savings, I should say, in some costs. And also as we look at Rivercrest, Rivercrest has now proven that it is 45% less use of gas and electric than conventional, a building of the same size and conventionally constructed. Now that, when we went to referendum, we talked about Rivercrest really being a 30% savings from conventional construction. And that's what it was modeled at. And we've been able to benefit as a community from a 45% less than in operating costs. And that will continue on the life of Rivercrest to all of our advantage. We've also had a $78,000 savings in energy consumption at our other sites. And compare that or add that to the savings from last year, it's $169,000 in savings. So certainly our staff have helped in reducing our energy consumption throughout our schools. We've reduced paper by 47%, and also we've established a community paper recycle site at Hudson Prairie, and if you haven't dropped off paper yet and collected yours and taken it over there, we hope you will in the future, contributing to all of us and our future. Turning our attention now and just looking to the 2010 school year that started last week, we have hired 46 certified staff and 34 support staff. Now, I gave these numbers a few weeks ago, and they were smaller than this because we've added some staff since that time. So if you were in that group, know that they have increased because of some more staff were added. Now, you could take those numbers and say, wow, those are full-time people. Well, no, they're not. They're full and part-time people. So if you take the certified staff and the 9 new positions, they're actually, those 9 new positions represent 4 full-time positions and 5 part-time positions. So same thing with the rest of the numbers. But we are an employer and employing at the present time people in our community and bringing people into our community. Looking at first day student enrollment, and I do this with a lot of preliminary look, caution, it's not official, it won't be official until the 3rd Friday in September. And it's hard to bring out numbers and then have people say, well, you changed your numbers. Well, student enrollment changes weekly, daily, and it really isn't official until that third Friday. So with caution, I'll move forward and give you a little highlight of what we've seen on the first day. And I should let you know that these are kindergarten through 12th grade district residents. So I don't have open enrollment in these numbers, we don't have early childhood, and we don't have other categories of students that will be included in our official enrollment. So right now it looks like we're up 80 to 85 students. We see an increase at all 3 levels. The high school has been over the last few years stable in their enrollment, and right now we're seeing an increase. And the scary thing is that largest class is in kindergarten. So if we look at our elementary enrollments, they're 400 and above right now, with the largest class in kindergarten. We just graduated last spring, a group just a little bit over 400. And we did that the year before as well. And that number is just starting to creep up. But what we find is when they start in elementary school, by the time they reach high school graduation, those numbers have escalated. So we're at 400 plus at the elementary per grade level, and continuing the growth that continues in the Hudson schools, even during a recession. We expect that those classes will be much larger. So we are employing in our community. We're bringing new employees to the community. And our first day enrollment shows that we're also bringing new families to the community. So in the Hudson School District, we are contributing to the local economy. Once again, the Hudson School District student learning is a great value for your dollar. Moving on to the middle school, as I said, it is the largest middle school in the state, and the Board of Education has approved a short-term solution for the next couple years. We were 86 students over capacity, 86 over capacity in September of last year, and it may be 100 or more this year in September. We'll see on the third Friday. The short-term solution is using space that we have, and thank you to Hudson Prairie and their staff for helping us use that space and making some accommodations as a result. So the middle school is now holding 3 classrooms in Hudson Prairie. And we're also constructing an addition to the middle school. The addition is a short-term solution, and I want to emphasize that, but it is also a long-term facility investment. You can see the space that's added, and what happens in the future for the long-term 6 through 12 solution that we'll talk about in a few minutes, we will be able to use this space. Hudson Prairie will be able to use the space, the middle school will be able to use the space, and our community. This is community space that's highly used in the Hudson School District. So it is a facility investment. The cost of the space is budgeted at $2 million, and half of that will come from the district fund balance, which Tim will talk about it in a few minutes, and half from a federal program, the Qualified School Construction Bonds, at 0 interest. If we were going out to borrow $1 million, instead of getting those bonds at 0 interest, it would cost our taxpayers an estimated $300,000 more in interest over a 10-year period. New courses for this year have already started. Project Lead the Way, our pre-engineering course that we started last year, we've added a new course in the sequence at the high school. Middle school has now added units as well, and all students will be exposed to those. And then we've received grant funding for that implementation. We have a new course in renewable energy, and we've started online courses a little differently than we had in the past. We have 7 additional advanced placement courses, so these are ways our students can add to their advanced placement credits. And then we have non-advanced placement courses in French, Japanese, Latin, web design, and game design. Certainly many ways to challenge students. Our district goals for the year, over the last year, 2009-10, we've had a team of high school teachers, administrators, parents, students, business and community members research and study high schools that could help advance our strategic vision and looking to the future, so future-focused high schools. From that team and year of study, they made a recommendation that these 4 areas be further studied for implementation. And the board approved that just recently, and Principal Laura Love at the high school will move that forward with her staff to further study each of the 4 areas and bring a recommendation back to the board for implementation. The board put on hold temporarily, looking at a long-term solution for 6 through 12 space. And they did that in consideration of our taxpayers as the recession started. But it's time now, as we look at these growing enrollments, our students moving through the district in larger numbers and moving into a middle school that's the largest in the state and over capacity, and then into the high school and increasing that enrollment. We will be, this year, starting to explore and study long-term space for learning options for grades 6 through 12 and starting to plan for that. And we hope you'll be part of that. We will be asking for community input, support, and help all the way through the process. So we hope you'll stay tuned and interested in that. As we think about the Hudson School District, we've had a strong tradition of success here. And we're all proud of that. We're proud of the academic success that our students have had. We're proud of our caring school staff that's been identified by our parents. We're proud of the fiscally sound financial state of the district. We're proud of our athletics and our co-curriculars and many more. So in the present, we continue that strong tradition of success. And we're adding in high levels of student learning that we're really challenging ourselves to reach a higher bar. And in the future, we continue that tradition of success in all areas, and then we move to higher levels, challenging ourselves above the next bar for student learning, so that each and every student is learning at higher levels in the Hudson School District. And looking to the future, then our focus will be on the high school of the future, and what does that look like inside? How should we educate students for their future? And then a grade 6-12 space for learning solution that we need for our students to prepare them for that future ahead. In a few minutes, Treasurer Brian Bell is going to talk about the sound financial condition of the school district. And following that, Financial Services Director Tim Erickson will be talking about the budget, introducing that, and how it supports the learning and some of the results, or all of the results that you've seen and more. So it supports a culture of excellence. And how we have planned for the budget and the levy to respond to the needs of our taxpayers during a tough time. So with that in mind, the Hudson School District learning is a great value for your dollar.
Thank you, Mary. Next item on the agenda is the Hudson School District financial overview, which will be presented by Brian Bell, our treasurer.
Thank you. Just a few brief comments tonight. First of all, I just want to thank my fellow board members, Mary and the district leadership team, the principals in the audience, the teachers in the audience, staff, students, and the residents of the school district for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'd also like to acknowledge the work and thank Tim Erickson for the hard work that he's been putting in over the course of the last year preparing this budget. It's been a challenge for us. I'd like to thank my two other Finance Committee members, Tan Chornahori and Lynn Robson, for their work over the past year. I'm confident that Hudson School District is preparing our graduates for success in their careers and is challenging students and graduates to become informed, caring contributors. I'm steadfast in my belief that Hudson's on the transformational path to become a national school district of excellence. The financial foundation of our district is sound. Around the country, school districts are under significant financial stress. We have a long history in Hudson of investing in our educational system, building conservative budgets, and ensuring cash reserves required for both capital improvements as well as unexpected financial situations. Our bond rating, which is a AA1 bond rating from Moody's, is one of the highest in the state, and in fact, we're in the top percentile nationally. I believe there's only 80 school districts in the United States of America that have a better bond rating than Hudson. The bond rating saves the district millions in dollars in interest payments and provides us great flexibility and options when we need to make future capital improvements. Against this strong financial position, I want to acknowledge the difficult economic times we have been in and we continue to face. Our community members, many of you in this room or watching on TV, are facing unprecedented economic challenges. Unemployment rates are high. People on fixed incomes have lost a significant amount of their nest egg that they have accumulated through the course of their career. Residents have seen reduced take-home pay and pay cuts and mandatory days off with no pay. Some of you residents have voluntarily taken these pay cuts so that other members of their companies aren't laid off. Here are some of the key considerations we accounted for in preparing for this year's budget. Property valuations are down 7.5%. After about $2.3 million in budget cuts we made in the previous year's budget, we cut another $1 million out of this year's as well. We have worked to build a budget, and we have challenged ourselves for a 0% tax increase in the levy. So from last year to this year, the tax levy is flat. We did this through additional budget cuts, utilizing funds available through our general fund balance and revenues that came out of the Federal Education Job Act. The board and I are committed to have a conservative budget. The latest Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction data shows the Hudson School District as being the 380th lowest out of 426 districts in the state. We are the lowest 11% statewide. When compared to the surrounding schools in our CISA, our expenditures are 37 out of 39 districts. There's only 2 districts that have a lower expense per student. While a tight budget is important, it is equally important to me, my fellow school board members, and to most of you in the community that we provide the resources required to allow our children to compete in a global economy. As I've said in the past, our graduates are not only competing for jobs against students graduating out of Wisconsin and Minnesota and across the U.S., but against the millions of other students graduating in countries like China, Germany, Korea, and other countries around the world. Many, if not most, of those students speak English. Not only do great schools help our graduates, but the quality of our education system directly impacts the quality of our community here in Hudson, the value of our homes, the desirability of our neighborhoods, and our community spirit. So those are my comments tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Now I'll hand it off to Tim Erickson.
Good evening. I want to welcome everyone here. I appreciate your attendance. I do want to acknowledge all of the different staff members that work on our budget throughout the year. The process starts back later really in 2009, as we start to look at expenditures and projections on revenues and different areas. And then it culminates in October of this year with the board's adoption of the budget and the levy. And so again, I do want to thank all the folks that are involved in this process, because it takes a team of individuals to put together this information. That being said, tonight I'm going to have some information up on the screen, and I'll flip back and forth. And if you don't have a copy of the budget book, they are available on the back table there. But I will be alternating back and forth between the different documents. During our 2010-2011 budget planning, we examined many areas of the budget, and from the preliminary budget, we reduced about $854,000. Those cuts were in many different areas across different line items of the budget. We also reallocated $513,000, so we took from certain other areas, $513,000, and reallocated those. We reallocated those to align with HSD 2025 strategic plan and to meet other requirements. We had, as Superintendent Egebraten had mentioned, we had a commitment to environmental sustainability, and we were able to reduce costs in that area. We saved about $78,000 this year alone in reduced utility costs. If we look cumulatively, when we started this energy reduction program, we've saved over $190,000. We continue to levy below the maximum allowed by the state. And as I get into the presentation, you'll see that where we levied in comparison to other districts statewide and what percentage of our levy makes up that total under levy. We'll continue to do that in this budget year as well, and it results in some significant savings for taxpayers. I want to talk a little bit about the different options that were reviewed by the Finance Committee and the board as we worked through the budget for 2010-11. Originally, you can see on the overhead, district valuation is projected, and these are, again, are projected figures because we don't receive information from the state until October. We don't receive final information on state aid or property values until October. So that's 4 months into our fiscal year. So we come back and we project and estimate a number of items that are major to our budget. But estimating where district valuations are going to wind up for 2010-11, we're estimating a 7.78% decrease in district valuation. Going back to our levy before taking any action there was at $29,598,000, and that levy is debt service of about $4.5 million, and then the balance is for operation of the general fund. The percentage change in that levy, so the levy was projected to go up 6.3%, mill rate of 8.84%, which was a 15% increase in the mill rate. And again, that's without, the mill rate is affected by the ups and downs in the valuation. So without doing anything, that rate will float. The first option that was considered was the district is a recipient of the Federal Education Jobs Act funding. This funding is approximately $1.6 million that can be used in 2010-11 and 2011-12. What isn't used does not get to be carried over. It is only available for those 2 years. And so looking at that funding, and how to use that funding wisely, we have put about $810,000 against this year. So for 2010-11, we put $810,000, roughly a little more than half the Jobs Act funding, into this year's budget. So what the effect of that is it brought the levy percentage down to 3.45%, so just under 3.5%, and it reduced the mill rate down to 860, which is a 12.17% increase. The second option that was looked at was a use of fund balance. Fund balance can be used when it's adequate. We have to maintain fund balance. Fund balance isn't all cash. But we have to maintain fund balance because of the way the district receives the major portions of its state aid and levy. Those funds are not received equitably throughout the year on a month-to-month basis. We get certain amounts of levy dollars in, and they have to last over the term of the operation. The same thing goes for state aids. They come in, they don't come in on a monthly basis. So looking at use of fund balance, this was an area that we felt that we could reduce. And so taking $600,000 of estimated fund balance use, again, that would have the impact of moving the levy down to a 1.29% increase. Levy mill rate of 8.42 and 9.84% change. And then the final option that was instituted was another round of budget reductions and adjustments to the budget. The total amount was $360,000. And so taking that $360,000 and applying that, and we get a total levy of $27,828,000, and that's down to a 0% change. So the levy from last year to this year is not increasing. The mill rate is at 831, which is a 8.43% change. And I want to talk a little bit about the mill rate increase because, as I said, the levy is not going up. When we look at, there are a number of different factors that can affect property taxes on your individual residence. If we take a very simplified example of this, and looking at our imaginary Raidertown, Wisconsin, it's got a population of 2 residences. So to make a point here in how this works, each one of those residences has a 2009 assessed value of $100,000. So each one has the same proportionate share, 50% of the total district property value. If you look at the district tax levy in this example, it's $2,000. So $2,000, each one has a 50% share of value in the district, and so each one of those residences will pay $1,000 in tax. Now, assuming that there are changes in that assessed valuation, and assuming also, in this example, which is the same as what we're proposing, a 0 increase in the tax levy, those 2 same residences may have a change either up or down in the assessed value. However, if the district levy remains the same, those 2 residences should pay the same amount as they did in the prior year. So again, in this example, if we said the assessed value went up to 110, the district levy remained the same at 200, they'd still be paying $1,000 apiece. And the same holds true if the assessed valuation comes down. So if that valuation comes down to $90,000, those 2 residences would still pay $1,000 apiece. Okay, now we're going to flip over to the annual meeting booklet on pages 13 and 14. And we'll talk a little bit about the historical valuation in the district, and this goes back to 1989, 1990, and all the way forward. to where our estimate is of district valuation for 2010, 2011. And it gives the percentage changes for each of those years. And again, you can see the total levy that's been levied over the course of those years, and the percentage change, and then the mill rates, and again, corresponding percentage changes. It's important to note that when we look at total levy, this does not include the school tax levy credit. So you'll see a school tax levy credit on your tax bill, and that amounts to anywhere between 16 to 19% credit back on the school levy tax. So the numbers I'm talking about tonight are gross numbers. So what you'll see after is you'll see a credit coming back that will reduce your school levy. It's also important to note when we look at, when we spread the levy across the different entities that lie in the district, such as the city, the town of Hudson, St. Joe, the town of Troy, and the village of North Hudson, we're apportioning what's called apportioning that tax across those different entities, and it gets apportioned based on equalized value. Equalized value is a conversion that the state of Wisconsin does to approximate market value. So we're not talking assessed value here, but assessed value is what will be used to calculate the tax on each individual property. If we look down at the bottom of the estimated valuations per taxing district, you can see there's quite a bit of change. What's attributing and what area is attributing to that 7.78% decline in overall district value? You can see the city of Hudson is expected, again, estimated to go down 7.27%. If you look at the town of Hudson, that's the biggest decrease at 10.61%. And the town of St. Joe at 7.05. Town of Troy had the smallest decrease at 1.17%. Now, in a perfect world, if we have these properties going up and down in unison, then again, what holds true is the tax share should be approximately the same. But that is not happening here. We've got some taxing entities that are going down more and some less. I've got an example of this later on in the presentation, where we look at one taxing entity that doesn't go down as much. When we go to spread the tax levy out to the entities, they pick up a little more. In this example, the town of Hudson will wind up picking up a little bit less. Okay, then on page 14 of your book, the proposed resolution to set the tax levy for 2010-11 is listed there, and the total tax again is $27,828,892. That's a 0% increase over last year, and that is broken apart as $23,267,000 for the general fund, and that's general operations that include all things except other funds, and you'll see those funds a little bit later in the presentation, and then about $4,561,000 in debt service. Again, as a superintendent that spoke to, the district really delivers a great value for your dollar. The students here perform very well academically. And again, proposing the 0% increase gives continued high expectations for learning, a systems approach to support students in achieving at higher levels, and then a high-quality staff establishing best practices for every student in every classroom every day. The next slide is a breakdown of the general revenues for 2009-2010, and it breaks it apart between local sources, and that's tax levy and other charges for fees, student fees, gate fees for admissions, So it's not just the tax levy, but it's makes up several different items. And then state sources. State sources are, of course, the largest one is state aid. Then we have other categorical aids for transportation that make up a much smaller piece of that revenue picture. And then the district also receives federal sources of funding. Included in that would be, as I mentioned, the Federal Jobs Act funding. It would include, we have Title I funds. Many are familiar with the title programs. But it represents a fairly small portion of the whole revenue pie for the Hudson School District. And then we have some other miscellaneous sources. So those total of $47 million, just over $47 million in 2009-10. In 2010-11, the proposed budget, you can see the breakdown there. And if you also look in your book, and if you look in your book on page 9, it also gives the same information, but we also calculate the percentages of that revenue and what percentage of total revenue that consists of. Again, the largest sources of revenue to operate the district are from state and local taxes. And together, they make up between 96 and 97% of revenues. And then we have our smaller pieces, which are federal sources, and then we've got other miscellaneous sources that also make up that total pie for revenue. One item to note when we look at the budget increase, if we go back to the 2008-2009 budget and compare that to the 2010-2011 budget, the increase is less than 1%. If you compare those two budgets, we have less than a 1% increase. It's just under 3/4%. And you can see there in 2008-2009, total budget was just over $50 million for the general fund. In 9-10, that's the year, as many may recall, that we had a 10.5% reduction in our state aids, and that was due to the state budget deficit. And so there was a pullback on state aids, and we responded with about $2.3 million in budget cuts off of our original budget. And then, if you move forward to 2010-11 and calculate that change, it's under 3/4% increase. And I might add too, we want to compare apples to apples here. So, yeah, we are taking $1 million out of the budget and out of fund balance for the middle school addition this year. And back in the 08-09 budget, we took budget of $1.3 million to take out for the construction of Rivercrest. So, taking those figures out, netting these, so we have comparative numbers. That's what we get to. Okay, and then going back to the book, and I'm going to jump up to page 10. And page 10 is the proposed budget, and we have three different sets of figures. We've got our audited figures from 2008-2009. We have our unaudited figures as we are in the final completion of our annual independent audit. And then we have the budget for 2010-11. And I'm going to highlight just a few items. If you look under number 210, which is taxes under local source, it's 2 lines down. The majority of that is the tax levy. That's the amount of taxes that are levied over the district. And moving down, the second large piece of funding, as I mentioned before, down to line 620, and that's state aid. And many years we run about a 50-50 or 49-51 mix between state aid and levy, and that fluctuates depending on the state formulas. If you look at 2008-9 and 2009-10, you can see that state aid is a much lower number. However, what the state did in 08, 09, and 9, 10 is they used what was called state fiscal stabilization funds. And those are funds that the states received from the federal government, and the state reduced the aid to the school district and then replaced the aid with their state fiscal stabilization funds that they received. So the net effect is a zero increase or decrease. There is no effect on the budget as far as the total amount of state aids received. If you go across on that line 710, which is the transit of aids, and that's the state fiscal stabilization funds for the first 2 years. And then if you look at 2010-11, we have $830,000, and that represents the $810,000 of the Federal Education Jobs Act, and then we've got another $20,000 of miscellaneous federal revenue in that number. So moving down to the bottom section, total revenues and other financing sources, you can see we're looking at a $49.9 million total in revenues. It's estimated, again, at this point until we get the final AIDS number from the state in October. So if we go on the flip side of that and look at expenditures, and we have many different types of expenditures. These are broken apart by function. So there's different curriculums that's broken apart by. If we go down to the line 250000, and that's business and administration and facilities. Now that, if you look under 1011, that line includes, as it says there, it's facilities. So that line also includes the $1 million that we'll be spending on the middle school addition coming out of fund balance. So that portion does not affect the tax levy. However, it is shown in total expenses in the general fund for the district. And if you go to page 11, we have the first line there, 410, which is a transfer. And those are interfund transfers. We are required to account for our special education activities in a separate fund, and that amount represents additional a transfer to cover revenues. If we add up all the different revenues that are available to special education, subtract out expenses, the difference then comes from the general fund to operate special education. So it's a combination of funds. Combination of some federal funds, some state funds, and then some general fund from the school district to operate special education. But if you look at total expenditures are $51,503,000. So you can see, comparing the revenues and the expenditures, there's a $1,600,000 increase balance between expenditures being greater than revenues, and that is planned. As we went through before, we're using $1 million from fund balance for the middle school addition, and then we're using $600,000 from fund balance to fund operations for this year, and that's to get the levy decrease. And then again, you can see the fund balance and where that is at the beginning of the year. And then that is projected to be at $15,179,000 at the end of the year. And again, the fund balance is not all cash. It consists of receivables. A big receivable, as you'll see a little later in the presentation, is tax receivable. And so at various times, our cash balances fluctuate up and down considerably as we fund operations in times when we're not collecting much cash, and then other times the fund balance goes up as we take in the different tax collections and aid collections. The next section is special project funds, and that consists of private grants and the special education fund. If you look in that very right-hand column, you can see the fund balance, and that fund balance really consists of the private grants that the district receives from different entities like the Hudson Education Foundation. Then the revenues, majority of the revenues and expenditures there are for special education activities. If you go down to debt service, the debt service is voter-approved bonding, and then we also have non-voter approved bonding, and that would be the $1 million, as the superintendent spoke about prior, the $1 million of funding from qualified school construction bonds, and those are zero-interest bonds, and that saves the taxpayers about $300,000 over the life of those bonds, which are about their 10-year notes. And then the next section down is Capital Projects Fund, and that consists of, if you look across at that activity, that is activity from the construction of Rivercrest, and also activity now for the construction of the middle school addition. And moving on to page 12. The Food Service Fund is a standalone fund. Many districts wind up subsidizing this fund through their general fund if the fund does not have revenues that meet the expenditures. The Hudson School District has been fortunate through good management and budgeting processes and good staff not to have to do that. So this fund truly does stand alone. There is not a levy for the food service fund. It's paid by user fees. And so that's definitely a positive thing. Like I say, some districts do have to subsidize that fund, but Hudson does not. The next section, community service. This is another optional item for school districts to levy for a community service fund. Hudson does not levy for community service. So again, another area where the fund is paid for via user fees. And you will notice that we are planning in this community service fund budget where revenues are not as much as the expenditures. However, that is a planned access to fund balance, again, in that fund. The package and cooperative program funds consists of cooperative areas where the Hudson School District is called the fiscal host, and we work with other districts on certain programming. And this year, we're looking at about $21,000 of expenditure. And then the last section under there is other post-employment benefits. The district established a trust fund, and this again helps our bond rating. So anytime the district has to go out and borrow, this contributes to maintaining that high quality bond rating that we have. And we have established that trust fund to fund our future obligations for other post-employment benefits. And you can see that the balance, beginning balance, ending balance, and the returns on that fund. Okay, now I'm going to flip back to the screen up here. And if we look back to our 2009-10 mill rate, we're at $7.67. If we move over and compare a neighboring district, River Falls is at $9.74, and that's for 2009-10. Menominee is at $9.91. And New Richmond is at $10.27. Baldwin Woodville at $10.50. And St. Croix Central at $10.69. And Somerset at $11.60. So you can see when you look at those other neighboring districts, you can see just how low the mill rate for Hudson is. Okay, now we'll flip back to the book one last time here. and pages 16 through 32. The first information is data from the Department of Public Instruction that they compile for districts. And this is 2008, 2009 is the latest date that information is available from them. And this looks at total educational cost for school districts across the state. And in this particular report, what we've done is to try and compare districts of similar size. Actually, we went more than districts of similar size. We went with the smallest district being at least 4,000 students, and we're about 5,500. So that and those districts of at least 4,000 and larger. And of course, Milwaukee is the largest district in the state with 87,000 students. Now, if you move down to the bold, when you get down towards the bottom of the page, you'll see Hudson. And if we look at total educational costs, what it costs us to educate our students here in Hudson, it's $10,657 was the calculation for 2008, 2009. That put us, as Treasurer Bell had mentioned, our rank of 380 out of 426 districts. So we are in the lower 11% of districts in cost to educate students, even though our size rank is 28th largest district in the state. We turn to page 17. Again, this is looking at 2008, 2009 again, and comparative cost per member for all school districts. And this is comparing districts within our CISA 11. We've got 39 districts in CISA 11. CISA stands for Cooperative Educational Service Agency. A district, the state is broken down into regions, and this is looking at the districts in our region. So you can see the corresponding total educational cost per member, and again, Hudson at $10,657, and it's 37th lowest out of the 39. And the state average is $11,822 per student. I'm moving on to page 18. Again, looking at mill rate, going back to mill rate, and comparing all public schools in Wisconsin. And I say all public schools because not all schools are the same. We have K-8 schools in Wisconsin, we have unified high schools in Wisconsin, and then we have the traditional K-12 school districts. This takes all of those into account, and the unified high schools tend to be lower in their mill rates in comparison. Their total overall expenses are not that of a total district, but that of a high school. So when looking at mill rate, again, Hudson is 348th out of those 426 districts. And you can see down at the very bottom, it gives state totals. State average mill rate is 842 in 2008, 2009. I'm going to page 19. We wanted to look again at districts that have valuations greater than $3 billion and less than $5 billion. So looking at valuations, and Hudson was at $3.7 billion in 08, 09. And so how do we compare to those other districts? And when we put those numbers down, we're 18th out of 25. And again, looking at, if you look at 22, 23, and 24, those are all unified high schools. And then page 20, just a bar graph that shows, and this is 2009-10, so this is last year. This was compiled by the Cooperative Educational Service Agency number 11, which comprises those 39 districts we talked about. And it shows the mill rates of all of those districts. And so if you look all the way over to the right, again, from 2008, 2009 to 2009, 2010, Hudson maintained its ranking as being the 37th out of 39 districts. And then I'll go to page 21. And again, 910, this is looking in a table form for district mill rate and tax levy. And if you go down at the bottom, again, number 37, and you can see the breakdown between general fund levy and the debt service levy. And then if you go over to the community service tax levy, there isn't any there because Hudson does not levy that, as I mentioned before. If you go to page 22, again, information compiled from the Department of Public Instruction. This is for 2008-2009, and this shows revenue limits and under levies. And the under levy represents an amount that districts are through the formula, are able to levy a maximum amount. This shows that Hudson under levied. They did not, and intentionally did not levy $5.1 million in 08-09. If you look at the next district, which is number 2, the Norris School District, their under levy amount was $1.9 million. So you can see we're far and above the next lowest levying district, or under levying district. If you look at other districts that have a revenue limit of our size or greater, if you look at number 6, Janesville, $96 million revenue limit, they under levied $1.2 million. DC Everest, $1.18 million. DC Everest is number 7. Their revenue limit is similar to ours. And you can go on down the list. Number 14, Racine, much larger in terms of school district, much larger in terms of revenue limit. They under levied $414,000. Sun Prairie, similar in size students to Hudson. They have a greater revenue limit, $63 million, and they under levied $200,000. And you can go on. There are several other districts there that you can pick out and compare when you look at revenue limit and the amount under levied. So if you go back to, or if you go to page 23, you can see all of the districts that have under levied across the state in 2008, 2009. If you take the under levy of $5.1 million and calculate the percentage on that total under levy statewide of $21,758,000, Hudson's under levy makes up just about 24% at the very bottom of the page, 23.63% of the total under levy statewide. And I can tell you that the under levy, the estimate of the under levy for this year's budget is in the $7.5 million range. So moving on to the next page, 24. This gives a 15-year history of property taxes on a typical residence in the Hudson School District, and this is an actual residence. It is located in the village of Hudson, and we've tracked the total property tax on that house since 1995 and through 2009, and we've calculated the increase, or decrease in tax. We've calculated the school district portion of that total tax bill. And then we've also calculated the increase and decrease there, as well as looking at fair market value, and that's the equalized value that the state has determined for that house. And so if you go down to the little box, you can see the total property taxes went up $937 from 95 to 2009, which is about a 47.5% increase. The school district portion went up $165, or a 14% increase. And then the value of the home went up 138%. Now, it's important to note, as I mentioned before, when property values don't move up and down in unison, it does create some differences in how that tax levy is apportioned over the different taxing districts. And in this case, if we look back at the village of Hudson, they had a small increase in their district valuations last year, where all other entities, the city of Hudson, the town of Hudson, the town of St. Joe, the town of Troy, all went down. So what you had was you had an opposite action on valuations in the village. And so the effect of that is when you go out and you apportion a tax levy, then the village of Hudson actually picked up a little bit extra in tax. And that's what happened, as you see in 08, 09 in the district portion. And then those that went down more than the average would pick up a little less tax. When we turn to page 25, this is the balance sheet as of June 30th, 2010, and it lists our cash and investments, 9.4 million at June 30th. So at that point in time, we had 9.4 million in cash and investments. And that number, as Treasurer Bell mentioned, does float down to roughly half that amount at certain points during the year, and we need to maintain a minimum amount of cash to operate the district. If you don't maintain that minimum amount of cash, what happens is you have to do what's called cash flow borrowing, and you incur extra interest costs, and you also incur issuance costs because you actually go out and you issue a bond for that tax flow or that cash flow borrowing. Many districts do this. Hudson has not had to do this at this point, so something that's very positive, and it's the reason that we do need to maintain fund balance, and fund balance is a portion of cash. As you can see, our receivables were almost 13 million. Majority of that is levy revenue that's hasn't been received by the district but will be received. And then we have accounts payable. Those are obligations that are due to be paid out. Certainly, withholdings and net payroll, we're a service provider. Our largest expenditure is for staff, and so you would expect that to be one of the larger items. But if you take your total assets and subtract out your total liabilities, it gives you the fund balance. And that's also used as a measure of strength when the bond rating companies look at your bond rating and how they issue your bond rating. And the final piece is debt service for the school district. And the balance as of July 1st shows what we owe in principal and then the projected amount of interest that's owed on each of those issues of bonds. As we go through those, you can see at the very bottom, $35 million, and that's the total owing. We had proceeds of $1 million, and that is in September here, the beginning of the month. We were issued the qualified school construction bond of $1 million, and that's zero interest. And then we've got payments and interest payments and principal payments during 2011, and we're ending with principal balance of $33 million. The district's debt amount is small in comparison to what it could be. The statutory limits on debt are 10% of the district valuation, so it would be somewhere around $360 million, and we're at $33 million. So our debt load is very manageable. The next column over shows 2010-11 tax levy. Tax levy is a little bit different than the expense because of the timing of when we receive taxes and when we have to make payments on our debts, on our principal and interest on those bonds. And so, again, if you look all the way on the far right, the tax levy is 4.561 million, and that's for the debt service. The latter part of the book I won't go through because I know this has been long and probably not quite exciting. And if you have insomnia at night, you might take this to bed and might put you right out. So with that, I'm going to end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. We are now at item 8 on the agenda, which is the hearing on the budget. This is the section where it would be appropriate for an elector to make comments. As a reminder, if you wish to make a comment, we ask that you come forward to one of the two microphones that are located in the two center aisles. Wait to be recognized by the chairperson, and once recognized, a reminder that we ask you to state your first and last name and your address. Recognize the gentleman at the microphone on the right.
Thank you. Jim Barline, 467 Park Lane, Town of Hudson. My comment is, a few weeks ago, there was an article in the Hudson Star Observer where I think Tim mentioned the mill rate was looking for an increase of 7%, I believe. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the mill rate proposed this evening is now 0%. Is that in part because of the new $60 billion stimulus fund that was approved, which the district is going to receive some a large portion of?
Tim, would you like to respond to that?
Sure. The article you mentioned in the paper was a preliminary budget, preliminary look at the budget. And part of that, as we went through, we are using $800,000 of the Federal Education Jobs Act funding. That reduces the budget. And then we also did additional budget reductions, and we also are using some fund balance to get down to a zero levy. So it's a combination of those different items.
Tim, was those numbers before or after this latest stimulus funding, the 800,000?
The numbers that you're referring to in the newspaper article?
Yeah, in the newspaper. I'm just trying to reconcile the numbers from the newspaper article and the numbers you gave this evening.
Right. If we look at the Federal Education Jobs Act, that funding, all of the details on that as far as how it can be used, we have the general information. And we didn't include that at that point in time because some of that information was just coming out. And so we had to try and confirm some of the requirements of that money. So now this application of the 800,000 is after that article.
And the expected amount you would be receiving from this fund?
The total amount of that is it's a $1,583,000. And so the use will be split over 2 years. It's eligible to be spent in 10-11 and then 11-12. And so the idea is to use approximately a little more than 50% this year, and then the balance of it next year.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, recognize the gentleman here on the right.
Thompson Cotta, 933 Ward Road.
Could you stand really close to the microphone and speak up? We're having a little bit of trouble hearing you. Thank you.
Okay. I'd just like an update on a question I had last year. A year ago, I asked a question regarding looking into the replacing of the WEAC health insurance with competitively bid private insurance, something like what the city apparently did with good results a year ago. And I was told last year that it was part of the union negotiations and couldn't be discussed at the meeting. So I was asking if it would be part of the next round of negotiations, and I would just like an update on that as to whether that ever came up in negotiations with the union.
Yeah, so Tom, what we did is we capped the district contribution to insurance.
Okay.
So, so that was the step we did, so we didn't have a unfunded or unknown liability in the future.
Okay.
We just said it's going to be flat, and so regardless of how much insurance will go up, we have fixed the school portion, the contribution we give from the district.
Okay, but was it ever bid to other than WEAC?
That one, Tim, you want to cover that? So just letting you know, that's how we that was a step we've taken since the last meeting.
Okay. That doesn't mean you got a good deal, though. I mean, you could maybe potentially have gotten a better deal by getting private insurance.
It is something that the district and the teachers continue to work on in negotiations.
Okay.
We do address it, and we're hopeful in the future that we will have some changes. But again, it is a contractual issue.
Did it come up in the last contract negotiations?
Yes, it did.
And did the district apparently didn't seek to take outside bids from non-WEAC insurance?
We have to have agreement from both parties to do that.
What was the district's position on that?
The district's position is we would like to bid out the insurance.
Okay, and that's, so does the union have veto power over the district in that regard?
Well, we have to have we have to be mutually agreeable. So both
Okay,
parties have to
so they
agree.
do have veto power then?
Well, both parties
Essentially.
have to agree.
And will it come up again?
I would reckon it would, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Recognize the gentleman at the microphone on the left.
Yeah, my name is Alfred Schultz, and 500 Carriage Lane, Hudson, Wisconsin. And I'd just like to follow up on a gentleman that was here before. As far as bidding out the insurance, I've had discussions with a number of school personnel, and I know that that's something the public would really like to see both sides get together on in the future. Secondly, I'd like to say it's awful easy to sit back and criticize what goes on in our school, but every time we look at the financial indices, you guys do one heck of a job. So keep up the good work, and thank you.
Thanks, Butch. Microphone on the right.
Yeah, Jerry Panning, 234 Station Lane North in Hudson. I have a question here. You mentioned the business administration and facilities budget had an increase from 8.8 to 9.1. Yeah, you didn't mention anything about the first item on the page, which says I can't say the word now. Curriculum. That shows a 9.3% increase. What does that involve?
The way the budget's designed is to gather in different functional or program areas. And there are definitely fluctuations in between those line items. But when you take all of the different line items, certainly wages, benefits, supplies, equipment, and you categorize them into those line items, that would be the total. If we look back into the detail, there are fluctuations for different reasons. If we have, for example, a purchase of, for example, if we looked at something other than undifferentiated curriculum, if we purchase band equipment, make a larger purchase there, purchase equipment such as some of the computer equipment or software. Those things are, will show a relative increase in expenditure from one year to the next. And then, again, they do fluctuate from time to time.
Well, I understand that, but 9.3% increase is what I don't understand.
Well, I think, if you could, if you're looking at in total, the budget in total, and looking at the, on page 11, 51.5 million would be the total increase. And the particular line items hold, so of course, going back to the business and facilities holds the $1 million. But if you look at, I guess I would concentrate more on the total increases. I
All
mean,
right, and then I have one other general question. I've always wondered at these meetings when there's a vote taken, how many people here in the room, for instance, tonight, and I'd like to ask the chair for them to show a hand, who is employed by the school district as opposed to just an ordinary voter like me?
I'm
Could you
sorry,
do
sir,
that?
that is not an appropriate motion for you to make.
Well, it isn't a motion, it's a question.
I couldn't answer the question.
All right, thank you very much.
It is important to know that the people that will vote this evening are all residents and taxpayers of the school district. If there are no, oh, is there one other comment? Otherwise, we'll move to the motion. Microphone on the right.
John Stevenson, 1022 2nd Street in Hudson. I was just wondering how you justify the up to 5.4% wage increases for administration staff. .8 to 5.4%.
Are you talking about a specific employee class, John, or?
It was noted in an article in the Hudson Star Observer on May 10th that those numbers were present.
So
I'm just wondering who that applies to and where those numbers come from. I doubt the cost of living has increased by that much in 1 year, or how they're justified.
Yeah, I can address that. If we go back and look over the 2 years, over the 2-year period, in 2009-10, there were wage freezes put on most of those employee groups. And looking at comparables across districts and trying to maintain some comparability, we want to be able to attract and retain highly qualified employees for the district and to continue to deliver the level of service to the students. But again, keeping in mind that when you look at let's say, for example, a 4.8, that's really over 2 years because there would have been a 0 the first year. Okay.
And 2011 to 2012 is also up to an additional 5.4 increase over the 2010, 2011. Is that correct?
So, John, I'm not certain exactly what was in the paper on May 10th. We certainly had a negotiated settlement with 2 of our collective bargaining units, and we also had some salary increases for administrative and support staff. As a board, I think we would tell you that when we look at comparables and when we look at the kinds of work that we're trying to do in this district to transform it and deliver on the promise of very high quality education and post-secondary success for every one of our students, that as a board, we believe that those increases were appropriate.
Okay. Are they in line, would you say, with the increases in wage of the community?
I can tell you that they were in line with increases for each of those employee classes. So teachers comparing with teachers and support staff comparing with support staff and administrators compared to other school district administrators.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Microphone on the right.
My name is Kevin Kanoki, 1215 3rd Street, Hudson. We seem to be taking a lot of pride in having a low mill rate, spending a minimum amount on students. Here's my concern. We have the biggest middle school in the state. My son is taking health classes in the elementary school. I don't know how proud that is. That concerns me. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Kevin. I think we recognize the need for a longer space solution in the secondary grades 6 through 12. We believe that we have made an appropriate move with the short-term solution that will provide some immediate relief at the middle high come January, but that is not the end of the decisions that the board needs to make. So thank you for your comment. If there are no other electors who wish to comment, I see one gentleman coming forward. Jim?
Again, Jim Bartline, 467 Park Lane. You mentioned just a moment ago that support staff received a pay increase this past year. Is that correct?
The non-union support staff, yes. There is still, the collective bargaining unit for the support staff is still in negotiation.
Then to clarify, they have not received a raise, then it is proposed?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Did the support staff receive a pay increase, or is it just something in proposal right now?
If you're talking about the support staff that's part of the collective bargaining unit, they are
The
still in
non-union
negotiation.
employees. Okay, just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try this again. If there are no other electors wishing to make comments, I would entertain a motion to approve the tax levy. The language is in the pink handout that you received when you entered the auditorium.
Page 14.
It is on page 14. And if you're going to make the motion, I would ask that you come forward to the microphone and state your name and your address.
Madam Chair,
Brian?
I'd like to make a motion that the tax in the total amount of $27,828,892, $23,267,139 for the general fund, $4,561,753 for the debt service fund, be and is hereby levied against the taxable property in the Hudson School District for school purposes.
Okay, there is a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, I will ask for the vote. It will be a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the levy as proposed on page 14 of the bulletin, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries on a voice vote. We are at the new business section of the agenda. The first item under the new business is to set the date for the 2011 annual meeting. Is there a motion to set the date for next year's annual meeting? With the suggested days as printed in the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion by Brian Bell to set the agenda, or set the date for the next meeting for Tuesday, September 13th at 7 p.m., and a second by Dan Chernahoy. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Is there any other business that should come before this meeting? Seeing none,
Move to adjourn.
there's a motion to adjourn by Brian Bell, a second by Jan Chernahoy. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you.